When I came home after that birth, it was such a special experience that I said to my husband, I simultaneously want to do this every day for the rest of my life and also never do it ever again, because it was so wonderful that I just want to keep doing it. But also it was so special that maybe I should just let it exist as its unique experience in my life.
Welcome to the CCDS Doula Collaboration Podcast, where birth and postpartum professionals come together to learn, grow, and support one another. I'm your host, Melissa Harley, a doula trainer and passionate advocate for the power of birth and postpartum care. This podcast is a space for authentic conversations with doulas and other perinatal professionals, from those just starting out to seasoned experts shaping our field. We'll hear from those in my circles, industry leaders, and community change makers. And I hope that you'll find inspiration, education, connection, and collaboration here. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get to it. Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's very nice to have you on today. I am excited to hear a little bit about what you've been up to. And would you tell all of our viewers a little bit about you?
So my name is Sarah Yastrab. I live in Woodmere, New York, which is a part of Long Island, not very far from JFK Airport, if you're familiar with the area. I have 4 children, ranging in age from 28 to 16. So I spent many years pregnant or nursing, or talking about being pregnant or nursing, or having friends who are pregnant or nursing. So it was a very big part of my life for a long time. And then more recently, my daughter just had her second child. Her first child was born via C-section, and she was very traumatized from that experience. And she was very determined that she wanted to have a vaginal birth the second time round. And she knew that her chances of being successful at that would dramatically increase if she had support with her in the room. And so she asked me to be her doula. If you know my daughter, she's very independent. She's not like the kind of person that has to have her mother with her for everything. She's the opposite of that. So I knew when she asked me that I had to take it very seriously. So I enrolled in a doula training course, and I studied under you, Melissa, as you know, for the audience to know. And that started my journey as a doula. Was at her birth, which was a successful and healthy VBAC. And here we are today.
That's fantastic. I am so excited to hear that she was able to have the birth that she was hoping for. Really, whenever you were going through training with me, your faith was apparent. And I have always been very interested in learning about different cultures and faith and how those interweave into birth, because they are a very big part of people. And I would love to hear a little bit about your faith, if you would share, and we can dive into how that relates to birth.
Sure. So we're Orthodox Jewish. Orthodox Judaism is not one monolithic block. There are a variety of different streams. There's a variety of different ways to practice. Different communities, different families, different family origins will practice their Orthodox Judaism a little bit differently. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a judge. It's not for me to tell anybody how to live or whatever. I'm happy to share with you my experience and how my family does things and how the people around me do things. But it's important to keep in mind that a lot of this is very individual. There are some common themes, but a lot of this is very individual. Judaism is a religion that puts a lot of value on life and on bringing life to the world. We believe that God created the world. We believe that God creates the world every single day, and we believe that when we have a baby, we're partnering with Him in that effort. So yeah, we believe that there are 3 partners in creating a life: the mother, the father, and God. So in that moment that you're giving birth, you're really bringing God down into this world. And so it's a very, very special experience. My family is a family of Holocaust survivors. We're only 80 years since the Holocaust, and there's no greater expression of joy. There's no greater expression of hope. There's no greater expression of faith and trust in a better future than having a baby. So it's really the practical task of bringing a baby into this world and then raising it, which is a whole nother story. But there's a very special beauty in pregnancy and birth in our faith.
Obviously, we all think that birth is a beautiful and sacred experience, but I'm wondering about when you were attending birth with your daughter, how that came into your experience together.
It was so super special. It's hard to find the words. As I said, my daughter, this particular daughter, is not one that it needs me in every moment of her life. She's very independent. She likes to do things herself, and she does a great job. I respect that. I respect her independence. But there was something about having that chain continue, the mother, daughter, and she gave birth to a girl. So it was a mother and a daughter and another mother and a daughter. And she actually said that as the baby was being born, she said, you gave birth to me and now I'm giving birth to her, and maybe I'll be there when she gives birth to her daughter. And it was not just a personal and a family experience. It was just another chapter in the story of Jewish resilience and community. It was a very special experience for all of us, I think.
Wow, that brought tears to my eyes. Like, that's just amazing. I have a daughter who's in her early 20s, and I don't know, we'll see what she wants to do, but maybe I can be with her. So I can only imagine what that might be like. Now, this was your first birth as a doula, as an official doula. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that experience, it being your first birth as a doula. Did you rely on what you learned in training? Did you find yourself in the intersection of mother and doula? What was that like?
I brought everything I am into that room. I work as an occupational therapist. I've been an occupational therapist for over 30 years. I brought the OT in me. I brought the young mother in me. I brought the mother of adult children. I brought the grandmother. I brought the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. I brought the political activist. I brought every single part of me into that room. I didn't know I was doing that until I was there, but every single part of me did come out. I was a little bit concerned, I'm not going to lie, because I came in with a job to do. If it's a stranger and they don't get the exact birth that they want, you do your best to support them and you go home at night and your part of the job is done. But this is my daughter, and I was quite concerned that if things didn't go her way, if that was going to be an issue in the future. So I studied as hard as I could. I read every book on that list. I did the course with you. I read everything. But I know that there's no substitute to experience. And I have a lot of life experience, but I didn't have a lot of doula experience. And so I actually offered her, would you like me to pay for a doula? Would you like me to pay for an experienced doula? And she said no. She said she interviewed some doulas and she didn't feel comfortable with them. She felt more comfortable with somebody who she knows was there for her and was on her side. So, and thank God it worked. We had the exact birth that we wanted. Beautiful, healthy mummy, healthy baby at the end of it.
It's interesting to me that doulas often go into their first few births with a little bit of, I don't know if I can do this job. But if you add on the layer of it being your daughter, I feel like that's a whole another level of pressure. I need to be a doula and take all these things that I've learned and put them into practice. But I also have to be a mother. And also, this is my grandchild. That must have been really impactful.
Yeah, it was. It was all those things. And there were a few points during the labor where we maybe didn't do exactly what the medical staff wanted us to do. We advocated for a bit of a different approach, and that did make me nervous. I was really hoping and praying that everything goes well in the end. And I could say, you see, we didn't listen, but look, we had a good result anyway, because the reverse would have just been horrible. She made all the decisions. I didn't make any decisions for her. I was very careful not to do that. I was very careful just to not even to tell her what I thought, just say, look, I think maybe these are some options that you can think about. It all worked out in the end. That made me very happy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's dive in a little bit to the faith piece of it. If you wouldn't mind, give our listeners a little bit of information about some of the customs that are brought into a birth setting whenever you are of Orthodox Jewish faith.
So in terms of labor and delivery, it's really the same as everybody else. There's not really that much that you could do that different. The vast majority of the time, I don't say this in a judgy way, I say this in a statistical way. The vast majority of the time, you're going to have a mother and a father who are married to each other, who are having this baby. Not always. We're seeing more and more same-sex couples, we're seeing more and more single mothers. But statistically, by and large, you're going to have a mother and a father who are married to each other. So when you hear me refer to that, that's just been my experience. I mean that in no way in a judgy way. So sometimes you'll see the couple praying together. Sometimes they'll read the book of Psalms together. Sometimes the husband will pray on his own. Sometimes when the baby is born, they'll make a blessing. It's a beautiful blessing that you make when new and exciting things happen, which is, blessed be the Lord our God, who has given us life and sustained us and enabled us to reach this moment, which that one always brings a tear to my eye. So some couples will say that at the end of the birth. Most of the rituals don't really happen in the delivery and the birth. There's a lot of customs related to pregnancy. Often women won't tell anybody that they're pregnant until the end of the first trimester. And this is all custom. None of this is Jewish law. This is custom. And we're a stubborn people. We take a long time to change. So we've been doing it like this for thousands of years. We're not going to change so quickly. So a lot of women won't tell that they're pregnant. A lot of women, even if they know the gender of the child, won't discuss that until the baby is born. Some do, more and more, but a lot don't. Very few couples will tell you the name of the child right away. They might do the paperwork, but a boy is usually named 8 days later at his bris or his circumcision. A girl is usually named in the synagogue. And so those are some of the little things that might come up. But in terms of the labor and the birth itself, there's not that much different. What you might see a little different is the role of the father. The role of the father in a birth tends to be more of a hands-off role. He's there to provide support emotionally. He's there to provide advocacy and support. Many husbands won't hold their wives' hands. They won't give them a hug during that time. Many of them will stand in the back and not watch the baby be born. So that might look a little different. But other than that, it's pretty much the same.
I've heard and learned a little bit through social media, TikTok, things like that, of some of the fathers not touching, but maybe being behind the curtain and maybe offering prayers or things like that. Is that part of Jewish law or is that more custom?
That's part of Jewish law. The important thing about Jewish law is it's not so much about the things that we don't do. It's about the things that we do while we're not doing the things that we don't do. So while his role is not very much a hands-on role, he is very important to have in the room. I believe, not as an Orthodox person, just as a person, I believe that the birth of a baby is a very intimate moment between a husband and a wife. And there's a very special chemistry that happens at that time. And that can happen even without the physical contact.
Just going back to your daughter, did you find that there were times like, we do as doulas sometimes where we need to step back a little and allow the partner or father to come in? How did that go?
I had to be very sensitive to that because exactly, I'm not just a doula, I'm also a mother-in-law. The mother is one thing, but also a mother-in-law. So I did try to be very respectful of their communication and their space and their interaction with one another. Once or twice they asked me to leave and give them a moment together, which over a 36-hour labor, I thought that was pretty good that it was twice. I did have to leave when she received her epidural, but that was something that I felt I had to be very sensitive to. While she needed me, when she needed me, when they needed each other, I needed to know how to withdraw a little bit. And I hope I did a good job.
Oh, I'm sure she would say you did a great job. So we're thinking about, we talked a little about rituals. You mentioned the prayers. If a doula were coming in to support a family that didn't have a lot of Jewish learning, is there something specific that you would say that they should be mindful of from the doula's role?
Orthodox Jews understand that we're a minority in this country. And we understand that if you haven't been exposed, if you haven't lived near a large Jewish community, you're not really going to understand a lot about our customs and how we do things. And we also know that they might sound strange to a lot of people. So we don't expect people to walk in knowing what we do and how we do things. And that's okay. Most of us are very happy to answer any questions. And if we want you to do something, we'll ask you. And if we don't want you to do something, we'll ask you. So I think what we're really looking for is respect. I think you would want to be like that with anybody, anybody from a culture that you're not familiar with. And if you walk in with respect, we're all in this together. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have a positive experience.
Right. Yeah. Do you find that people of the faith look for support and practitioners and things who are also of the faith? That continuity, congruency piece of things?
I think it's necessarily so much of the faith. I do think maybe values, maybe you want to be in the hands of people that respect your values. You want to be in the room with whoever's going to get you and your baby through this process as safely and as pleasantly as possible.
What about modesty? Are there any concerns or customs around modesty during labor?
So like everything we're talking about, everything is very individual. A little bit about modesty in general. We believe that things that are of value are best to keep private. And we believe that the human body is a very holy thing. And so we tend to keep it private. This is one of those things where everything is individual. This is really individual. People really, depending on the community, on their family and their own ways of looking at things, people do things very, very differently. In general, when you're not in labor, in general, Orthodox women will wear skirts or dresses. They generally don't wear pants, and they generally wear clothes that will cover their collarbones and their elbows and their knees. Married women usually also cover their hair. So I'm wearing a wig now. Married women will often wear a wig or a hat or a scarf. From some streams of Orthodox Judaism, some women will even shave their hair. So that's in general. In labor, I mean, there's only one way for that baby to get out. So you got to do what you got to do. But what I find is there's a very different approach to everything else. So some women will say, listen, I got all my bits and pieces hanging out there. I'm not worrying about my elbows. And I personally felt the opposite to that. I felt like, look, I got to give birth. That's not a position I'm really terribly comfortable in. I'm going to keep my hair covered because to me, that helped make me feel like myself. That helped me feel like I had a little bit of control and I had a little bit of dignity in a situation where I felt very vulnerable. I don't know if women behave differently, if they're having a home birth versus a hospital birth, but those are some of the things, that might come up. And there's no issue with having a male doctor or nurse. I've never heard a rabbi have an issue with that. You have to have the person in the room that's best able to get you through the process.
Yeah, that's something I have learned from some of my Jewish colleagues. Health and safety come first, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we talk about Shabbos, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, which is exactly what I wanted to talk about next. Tell everyone who are not, the people that are not familiar with Shabbos, tell us a little bit about it.
So Shabbos, also called Shabbat, is the Jewish Sabbath. It runs from sundown on Friday until the stars come out on Saturday night. And some of what I'm going to describe, we also do on the Jewish festivals. On Rosh Hashanah and some of the other festivals, we have some of the similar restrictions. We refrain from the ones that would most become an issue in a doula situation. We refrain from using electricity. We don't turn lights on and off. If the light's already on, we benefit from the light, but we don't turn lights on and off. We don't travel. We wouldn't go in a car or on a bus. We don't handle money, and we don't cook. We eat, but we don't cook. So I think those are the major ones that might apply. As you said, a woman who's in labor has the halakhic status. Halakha is the body of Jewish law. A woman who is in labor has the halakhic status of a person who's in grave danger. So in such a case, anything that you need to do, you can do. If you need equipment that's electric, you turn it on. If you need to get to a hospital, you go in a car or an ambulance or whatever, or you call someone. If somebody needs to come to you, they come to you. All bets are off. Anything that needs to be done to keep the mother and child safe is done. In fact, a birthing mother is considered so worthy of care that some of the classical texts even say that even a mother who is blind on Shabbos, if she asks you to turn the light on, you could turn the light on. So it doesn't even have any direct benefit to her, but it makes her feel better, so you could do it. So for sure, anything that's life-saving, you don't even think twice, you do. But even things that just will give the woman more comfort and make her feel like she's safer, even some of those things you can do on Shabbos. If it's a fast day, there are a few days in the year where we don't eat or drink. If it's a fast day, of course, she's not going to fast. And that status of being a sick person in grave danger, that lasts for 7 days. And then after the 7th day, from 7 to 30 days, a woman, after having a baby, a woman is considered an ill person who's not in grave danger. And when situations come up that you would have to consult with a rabbi in terms of eating on a fast day or traveling on Shabbos, or that there's a little bit more nuance there, and that would have to be discussed on a case-by-case basis.
So the first 7 days, it's whatever they need. And then beyond 7 days, is that when they would seek the rabbi, did you say? So if someone was nursing and needed additional calories or not to fast, things like that, would they go to the rabbi and say, I'm nursing, and then have a conversation and then receive a special blessing to skip the fast?
So I'm not a rabbi. If it were me, that's what I would do. And that's what I did do, actually, with one of my babies. And the rabbi may ask further questions. The rabbi may say, okay, you can eat, but just eat small amounts regularly instead of eating big meals. The rabbi may say, don't fast at all. The rabbi might say, you could drink, but you can't eat. Depending on the very specific considerations, you'll get a very specific answer.
So that's interesting. One person may get a different answer than another if they go to a different rabbi. Is that correct?
If they go to a different rabbi, if they have different needs.
And are rabbis similar to like in Christian faith where there's a specific church and you guys have a synagogue? Is a rabbi over that particular building, so to speak, like it is in Christian faith, or are there rabbis within the community more? How does that work exactly?
Probably a combination, probably a little bit of both. Most synagogues do have rabbis, but you don't necessarily go to that rabbi for every question. I do. I go to my synagogue's rabbi. I feel close to him, and I trust his view on the world. But sometimes you might go to someone who is your teacher. You might go to someone who's known to be an expert in that particular field. Yeah, it could go in several different directions. Yeah.
Kind of like you're going to the elders, the wise people in the community that can provide perspective and yeah.
Right. And it's not just perspective, it's also generations of bodies of knowledge. It's almost like going to a lawyer or a judge who can, look at all the legal literature that's been written over thousands of years and say what your situation is considered and therefore what you can do.
They're very studied, it sounds like. Is there anything else during the postpartum time that someone might do? Any traditions, any special blessings?
Yeah. So when a baby boy is born, as long as they're healthy and everything is going well, most baby boys will have a bris at 8 days of age. So that's a circumcision, and that's usually accompanied with a little bit of a prayer service and maybe a meal. And that's usually when a baby boy is given a name. A girl, the father will go to the synagogue on one of certain days, and then the father will have a little ceremony where he'll give the baby a name. And then sometimes they'll do a little meal also. There's a lot of new things happening with baby girls because they don't have a bris. So there's a lot of different ceremonies that people are starting to establish for girls as well. One thing is called the Simchat Bat, but there's other things that people do for a girl. A woman will go approximately 6 weeks after the baby is born. A woman will go and immerse in a ritual bath, which is a way of her to sort of experience a bit of a rebirth herself before she comes home. Those are pretty much the ones that are the most common, I would say.
I've learned a little bit about the mikveh bath from Miriam, the labor and delivery nurse on TikTok. I don't know if you're on TikTok, but there's a labor and delivery nurse who is Orthodox, and she does a lot of teaching. She's just recently had her 5th baby, who's absolutely adorable. But it's been really interesting learning about her rituals and her customs and things like that. Some of those mikvahs are very nice inside.
Yes.
So on a more serious note, recently there were some reports of some nurses who were fired because of anti-Semitic words and how they were treating patients in Australia. And I'm wondering, have you experienced, especially in any kind of medical situation, or did your daughter experience anything, any anti-Semitism or discrimination because of your faith, would you say?
Unfortunately, yes. It's something that has sort of been simmering under the surface for a while. It's become a lot worse since the events of October 7th. It hurts me to even say it, but when I was looking for a doula course, I was really concerned whether I would be welcome, because there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the birth space, in the midwife and birth space. I've heard multiple reports of women who have reached out to midwives and doulas seeking care, who have been told, I don't work with anyone who's going to circumcise their sons, which is really code word for saying I'm not going to work with Jews. Because there were a lot of hot button issues surrounding birth and babies and bringing up babies. And I've never heard of a midwife or doula saying I won't work with anyone who vaccinates or who doesn't vaccinate or who homeschools or who doesn't homeschool or who nurses or who doesn't nurse. But for some reason, this is an issue that they feel emboldened that they can say that they won't work with patients who'll do that. I've heard multiple times of doulas and midwives that will require their clients to sign on to a particular position on the conflict in the Middle East, that for some reason that this is such a serious issue that they won't work with clients who don't subscribe to their views on the Middle East conflict. I've been an OT for many years. That runs against everything I was ever taught about working in healthcare, that you treat everybody and you treat based on need, not based on beliefs. I don't know how midwives get away with it, because midwives are licensed, and I can't imagine that the licensing boards are okay with this. Doulas are not licensed. And for some reason, doulas feel very emboldened to do this. And I do think that it's very unfortunate.
It's heartbreaking, actually. You know, when we think about the vision of a doula for every person who wants one. And I think you bring up some other hot button topics that I have actually seen some people put a line in the sand about a couple of those things every now and again, but it hasn't been very often. But it's just been kind of a one-off here and there. But to hear you say, it sounds like it's a little bit more of a commonality.
Yeah, I had one person told me that it's happened to her so many times that she just starts the email by saying, I'm an Orthodox Jew. I'm looking for a doula or a midwife, whatever it is. If you don't want to work with my population, I'm just letting you know right off the bat before we even get into a discussion that that's who I am. And that's the extent that it's gotten to, that people feel like they need to just say it out loud at first to prevent having to be confronted with it.
Yeah. Because I imagine how it must, I can't imagine how it must feel actually just thinking about that rejection piece of it too, right? When you go to someone hoping, very hopeful that they might be able to provide services or care and really special care that you're looking for, especially as looking for doula care. But then to get that, no, I'm sorry.
And a lot of these times, these mothers, they're young and they're very vulnerable and they don't want to report it. They don't want to make an issue of it because they're still looking for somebody to care for them.
Right. Is there something that you feel that doulas would benefit to know as they're navigating? If they are, what do you think we can do to make it better?
To do what we say we do, which is what you just said. A doula for everyone who wants one. You're a soul and they're a soul and you're just two souls in a room and just connect on that level. Everything else can exist outside, but when you're together, you're there for a reason. You don't have to agree with everybody. You don't have to like everybody. As a professional, you have to be able to work with everybody respectfully.
It does go back to what you said in the beginning, which was respect. And I do believe that there is the right doula for the right clients. So some of that may come into it as well. Just making sure that doulas are working with an open and loving heart and the clients are also coming to it from an honest perspective and wanting to make that connection. I think that is important. But some of my colleagues and friends are of the Orthodox faith, and they are some of the most kind, loving, amazing, beautiful people that I know. We have we have several within our organization that practice Judaism, and it's heartbreaking for me thinking of them as well. Just my, friends in this birth space.
Appreciate that you say that. We're just like anybody else, you like some of us, you won't like some of us. Some of us are sweet, some of us are nasty, just like everybody else, Well,
my experience has been sweet for the most part. I hope that as doulas, we can think about the birthing family and what their needs are and hopefully give them the same care. And then on that same note, not just the doula's perspective on this, but what about in the medical health care in a hospital setting? So if somebody were to come into that birthing space, are there things that doulas can help watch out for or be mindful of to make sure that the client is getting equitable care?
Specifically regarding anti-Semitism?
Yeah.
I think politics should be out of the healthcare space. I don't think there's ever a reason, not on this side and not on that side. I don't think politics should be in that space. There's a whole world where you could talk about these things. You could talk about it at a dinner party, talk about it on Twitter, talk about it wherever you want. I feel like what's going on in a hospital is sacred, whether it's birth or any healthcare. I don't see that there's a reason to wear a pin or anything. There's a lot of virtue signaling. It's not the place for it, in my opinion. The hospital where my daughter gave birth, I didn't see anything. There were nurses of all different ethnicities. I didn't ask them what they think. They didn't ask me what we think. I don't know what they do on their free time, but they treated us like they would treat any other patient, which I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
I think we already touched on this, but last thoughts on ways in which doulas can best honor and respect the cultural needs of families that are of the Orthodox faith.
Yeah, nobody's going to get offended if you don't do this. If you're looking to be super extra sensitive, I would say if you're attending a home birth, stay out of the kitchen. Just stay out of the kitchen. Orthodox kitchens are very complicated with the kosher laws, and you can't take this spoon and put it in that sink unless someone specifically asks you to do a specific task. That's probably the best way to go. And if you're there on a Shabbos or a festival, it would be nice before you leave to sort of, did you want this light on? Are you comfortable here? Is the AC at a good level? Because they might not ask you, and once you leave, they're not going to touch anything. Might be nice to just check that things are the way they're supposed to be. And other than that, don't be insulted, don't be offended. You can ask, oh, what's the baby's name? But you might be told we haven't given a name yet, and that's okay. just be prepared to be surprised a little bit and go with the flow. And I think that's really the best way. And also in general, not just with Orthodox patients, but in general, with that modesty piece that we were talking about, knock on the door before you go in the room, which I think we should be doing anyway. Little things like that, which are mostly things that we should be doing anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just respectful care that we should do universally across cultures. I was thinking about when you were talking about, would you like the light on? Would you like me to adjust the air conditioning? Things like that. I was thinking about some of my colleagues who I've been at conferences with, and the conferences are typically over a weekend. So they typically start on like a Thursday and go through Sunday. And so, of course, we work to have like kosher meals for people and things like that. But there's still some very real logistics that sometimes come into play and can make or break someone's ability to actually come to the conference or not. Sometimes they're very easy to work through, like where can we light some candles and have some prayer on Friday evening? Those are really easy. But then the last conference we were at in person, the meeting space was on the 50th floor. And so you can't walk up 50 flights of stairs a couple of times a day.
Right.
So we actually would go to our Jewish colleagues and say, do you need to get on the elevator with me? Or, something like that. Can we go together?
Do you know how much I appreciate that? I never expect it. I never expect people to arrange kosher food or anything like that. And when someone of their own thought and own volition comes and asks me, can I do this for you? It doesn't go unnoticed. It's very, very appreciated.
It's my pleasure, because I think just in general, we all want to be respected for who we are and how we show up in the world and what we bring. I have learned quite a bit from my colleagues, whether they are of Jewish faith, of Christian faith, of a different faith or of no faith. I love learning about the different traditions and cultures, and just trying to make everyone feel comfortable and accepted and loved and cared for. I guess maybe it's the doula in us. Sometimes we like to doula each other, I think.
Yes.
So we should, be mindful of that. But it's always good to know. And I love that you brought that back into the birthplace, because I actually hadn't really thought of that. If a doula was providing care and, maybe was there and it happened to be a Saturday and then they were getting ready to leave. I think that's such a good point that there are some things they could do to help the family a little bit.
Right. Or even if the baby is born, on a Friday and they're spending the Shabbos in the hospital, might leave the light on or off or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. If you had to do something, would keep that in mind. That's nice. It would be nice to say, did you want this on? Did you want this off? Yeah. Before you leave, because they might not ask you and it might make a difference.
This is just something that just came up for me, but I'm wondering, sometimes when babies are born, there's a custom in some groups to do like meal trains or for people to bring food. Is that something that you would say that families in your circles do?
Yeah. Most of the synagogues that I know of will do a meal train for a family that has a baby. There are some communities, some families that have a lot of children. I have 4, so I'm using that as a baseline. So some of them really go up high, even more than 10. So some communities where families tend to have very large families, they will often send a woman to what they call a Kupatorin home, which is, I guess it's almost like a rehab for postpartum mothers. Rehab, like if you had a stroke kind of rehab, not stroke kind of rehab. So it's a place where you don't get medical care per se, but they help you take care of the baby, and you have the opportunity to rest, and you have nice food, and you're around other women in the same situation, and they could teach you how to do baths and things like that. So that's not something I ever wanted, but that does exist in certain communities. I think where we need to do a little better, if I'm being honest, I think where we need to do a little better is with people that are maybe less affiliated with the synagogue. Maybe they don't live close to their family. Maybe they live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a vibrant synagogue. I think maybe we need to try to reach out to them a little better, and to our single mothers. I grew up in a home with a single mother, so I'm not judging. I have a friend who is a single mother by choice, and though she has cooked for many, many women who have had babies, nobody thought to send her a meal train when she had a baby because there was no husband to feed.
That's sad.
Yeah. So I think we could do a little better.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's an area for growth. And I think on that note, actually, I think that we could do better with postpartum care in general. for everyone. It's just a time when it just like makes me just feel so tight and tense inside when I think that very often we, at 48 hours, send families off and say, we'll see you in 6 weeks. And then they just have to figure it out. Really shout out to our postpartum doulas who are trying to bridge that gap, because there is a big gap.
Especially if you don't have family available.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, are grandmothers typically very involved or on cynicals and others whenever there's a new baby brought in to a Jewish family?
Well, there's a cliche of a Jewish grandmother, a booby. My grandchildren call me booby. And I'm trying to model myself after my beautiful grandmother, who I loved very, very dearly. So yeah, we are quite the cliche. We feed them, we yell at them lovingly. Yes. Look, as with everything, it varies from family to family. We do try to encourage intergenerational relationships. I was fortunate. I knew my grandparents. My mother didn't know her grandparents. My grandmother didn't know her parents. My grandmother was orphaned at a very young age. And my son-in-law was close to his great-grandmother. His great-grandmother was alive when he was well into adulthood. So we definitely encourage intergenerational relationships.
And how has been getting to know this new little one been for you, especially having been there for the birth?
It's wild. If anything, I was probably closer with the first one because my daughter was traumatized after that birth. I've since found out that that's quite common after a C-section. We used to just say, oh, well, healthy mommy, healthy baby. Let's all be happy, happy. And she was grateful that she was healthy and the baby was healthy. And she does love the baby and did a great job with him. That was a very big disappointment to her. And it took her a long time to get over it. And she came to me. They came to me for 2 weeks. They stayed with me for 2 weeks. And I was very, very hands-on with that baby. I said to her multiple times, I said, here's your baby, but you're still my baby. And after like the 20,000th time I said that, I think she really internalized that. And that was really true. And so I had a very special closeness with him. With this one, it's her second. She had a great birth. Her husband got a lot of time off work. So they've been taking care of the kids together. She really hasn't needed me that much. They don't live far, far away, but it is a 45-minute drive. So I'm not going there on a random afternoon. So I feel like I know this little lady a little less well, but it certainly is very special. And every time I buy her something or do something for her, my daughter says, you need to do that. You brought her into this world. And I'm like, but she doesn't care.
Oh my goodness.
That's joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's bittersweet because what you just described to me was basically your daughter growing and different birth experience, but second time baby, just being able to fly a little bit more on, her stable feet with a good foundation that you've been giving. So bittersweet, but also it's what we want for our kids, right?
That's our job as parents, right? Is to put ourselves out of business for them to be able to take care of themselves.
That's wonderful. Well, I just want to thank you for sharing and being so open and vulnerable today and teaching us a little bit about some of the things that are important to you and to your, individual faith. Because I think one thing I learned was that it is very individual. Do you have any just closing thoughts that you would give to doulas that maybe were wanting to learn more and or maybe working with people from your culture?
It all goes down to respect. To see really written down information, I would recommend that you visit aish.com. They have a lot of good information, or most communities in the United States will have a Chabad. The people in a Chabad house are always very happy to answer questions. I see somebody on TikTok. I know on Instagram there's That Jewish Family.
So now that your daughter's birth is behind you and you took the doula training, are you thinking about continuing your work as a doula?
When I came home after that birth, it was such a special experience that I said to my husband, I simultaneously want to do this every day for the rest of my life and also never do it ever again, because it was so wonderful that I just want to keep doing it. But also it was so special that maybe I should just let it exist as its unique experience in my life. But I like I said, I feel like I brought every part of me into that room. So I do feel like I have what to give, and I've invested this much in it. So I definitely want to complete the certification. I found the on-call 2 weeks a little more stressful than I might have thought. So I'm not sure that I want to leave my job and do this full time, but I definitely want to do it again. I definitely want to do it more. And just again on that mother-daughter theme, I sort of feel like maybe that would be like a niche for me. Maybe women who, for whatever reason, don't have mothers or don't have good relationships with their mothers, or for one reason or another, need that sort of mothering experience. I'm older than most women who would be giving birth, so I feel like that might be a nice niche for me or anybody. But yeah, I definitely want to keep at it.
That's such a neat way to put it. I think that's a great place to close out. So how can people find you?
I'm on Facebook. Sarah Yastrab. Anyone is welcome to reach out to me through Facebook Messenger. I'm happy to accept clients. I haven't completed my certification yet, so I'm not charging a lot of money. So anyone who lives in the New York area who's looking for a doula, I would be thrilled to talk to you. Yeah, Facebook is probably the best way.
Well, thank you, Sarah, so much. I really started this podcast so that I could highlight and really hear the unique stories of all the doulas that have come through my doula workshop, and just ones that I have personally been in community with and I consider to be colleagues and friends and people in our communities. Everyone has just such a unique story to tell, and I appreciate you sharing your story, a little bit about you, and thank your daughter for allowing us to hear a little bit about her story too.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Just wanted to say that when I was looking for doula training, I literally just Googled doula training. I had no idea what I was doing. And the reason why I picked your workshop is just for scheduling and not for any other reason. It just worked with my schedule. And I'm just so grateful. God puts you in the place you need to be in. I cannot imagine that with 1,000 recommendations, I would have come across a better instructor than what I had. I feel like you really sent me out there very well prepared. And I appreciate everything that you told me. I appreciate that you stay in touch with us through the Facebook group and privately where necessary. It's really, really very appreciated. Like you said, I feel like you're doulaing me through this journey as well. And I'm grateful to you for that.
Thank you. That's so lovely to hear. I can't tell you how that feels. Thank you for sharing that. And it was just a pleasure. In my workshops, I say this to students, but I really believe in peer-to-peer mentorship, not top-down mentorship, more where we all have something to learn from one another. And that's what I love, I think, about the community that we're creating together. So I learned from you today, and I'm grateful that you've shared that you've learned from me.
For sure.
That's what the collaboration is about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Melissa.